Greetings, I am Tom Merle. On this week's episode, I interview queer activist, poet, and scholar Sam Obeid. Check it out. Greetings, everyone. I am Tom Earl, and this is The Celebration. As you know, this is my year of courage. We know you could be anywhere, so the fact that you're here, sharing your greatest gifts, your time and energy with us, means the absolute world to us. We want to let you know that wherever you're at in your life, that we are holding this light for you and letting you know that we appreciate you, we love you, and just as you are of value. I have an amazing guest today. She goes by the name of Sam Obeid. How's it going, Sam?
Pretty good, man. Pretty good.
I just want to say I appreciate you so much for taking the time to join us and share your energy with the folks listening / watching.
I'm honored. Thank you so much for asking me to do this.
Oh, of course. So let me do a little intro and then we'll jump in. Does that sound good to you?
Sounds fantastic.
All right. Y'all going to love this bio. Sam Obeid is a queer activist, poet, scholar based in Tampa, Florida. She's Indian, born and raised, and moved to the United States in 2007. Sam began her poetry career in 2012 and moved on to the national slam scene in 2015 at the Women of the World Poetry Slam, where she took 5th place on final stage. Since then, she has returned to the Women of the World in 2016 and placed 8th at Southern Fry 2016 with the Speak Tank Slam team. She is featured at numerous venues across the United States, including DC and New York City. Her work speaks to the tensions of intersectionality, queer identity, immigration, and love. Offstage, Sam works in the area of youth development and empowerment. She's a full-time parent to her canine soulmate, a fashion addict, and a culinary enthusiast. Yes, indeed. Looking back, I don't know, 15 years ago, did you imagine this would be your bio?
Not in the least. I'm 34 now, so 15 years ago, I would have been 19. Oh my gosh, right? I would have been 19. Actually, hold on. Let me correct that a little bit. At 19, I was in my final year of undergrad, right? And so, yeah, I think a little bit I would have known to some extent that this would have been the person that I was going to be. Maybe not poet, definitely scholar, definitely activist, definitely puppy parent. I'm confident that I would have known that about myself.
Parent.
But, my canine soulmate, right? Sure, she's the love of my life. But outside of that, like all of the other stuff that I've done, on the level that I've done it, probably wouldn't have guessed that I'd have the opportunity and the privilege to have been able to acquire all of that.
So looking back now, how does it feel like owning all of that and the evolution and the progression, all of the accomplishments? How does that feel reflecting on that?
I mean, the accomplishments, of course, they're great, right? But not to sound cliche, it really is never about the destination. It is always about the journey. And so how I got there, the people that helped me get there, people that I sometimes had to get through to get there, who I've become over the course of time as a human being is probably the most important aspect that I would reflect on. The accomplishments that I've had as a human, as a person, who I am now, more than the things that I've achieved, I think are the most significant to me when I look back on it.
That's wonderful. Are there any ones that come to mind? Any transformations along the journey outside of the accomplishments?
Absolutely. My 19-year-old self would probably not recognize the human that I am now, in the sense that I have a very bad temper. But when I was 19, my temper was also just as short as I am, and I'm 5 feet tall. So I had a really short fuse. And so I would lose my temper. I would get into fights all the time. I wasn't diplomatic, like I didn't stop to think about what's happening from the other person's perspective or why they're coming at me a certain way. I was always on the defensive and always on the offensive because of that at the same time. And so now, since I have the honor of working with young humans, that has also tamed me, if I should say so, a lot. It has made me a much calmer person, a much more diplomatic person, someone who can step away and think before she speaks. And at 19, I definitely was not that human. And I like a lot more the more thoughtful, potentially more empathetic human that I try to be on an everyday basis.
For anyone of any age, hearing what you're saying and seeing themselves standing in the place of where you were at 19 with what you just described, do you have any advice or things that helped you to achieve that new demeanor and way of approaching conflict that you just highlighted?
I mean, I think that there are certain lessons to be learned with age, I'm not talking about in the sense of adultism. Obviously, it's definitely something I'm 100% against. But as you live, not so much as you age, but as you live, if you intentionally live your life, there is a promise to grow wiser from it. If you intentionally and honestly live your life and are willing to self-reflect on who you are and what you are going through, there is much to be learned from it. So my 19-year-old self was doing the best that she could, was being the best version of herself at 19. And so I don't fault her in any way for who she was. I'm very grateful to her for being who she was, because that created the path for who I've become today. And so to anybody at any age, I will say, if you intentionally and with a lot of self-reflection, travel on your journey with the intent to be and continue becoming a better human on an everyday basis, you will learn things for yourself and you will transform. Evolution is probably change is constant, right? So evolution is probably the one thing that we can count on in ourselves, should we allow for it to happen.
I love that. So it's the inevitable. If you have that intention for transformation.
If you have that, and if you do the work, things will happen. If you don't do the work, things won't happen. So it's on you at the end of it.
What would you say is the work?
I'm a huge advocate, like I said previously, I'm a huge advocate of self-reflection. I'm a huge advocate of thinking about my actions, thinking about my conversations, thinking about my rhetoric. How does my life, my visibility, who I am and what I profess to be, how far do I practice what I preach? I'm a huge advocate of constantly thinking about that, constantly reflecting on it. And different people have different practices on how they reflect. Some people like to write. Some people like to set time aside to reflect on who they are, so on and so forth. I have developed a practice of constantly thinking, and it can be a little difficult. It can be a little bit of a tedious process when you are constantly thinking about the things that you are doing. But it works for me, and I like tedious. I'm good at it. I function well with it. And so constantly thinking about, constantly reflecting on who we are, how we are, why we are, and what we do impacts both ourselves and other people. I think provides for a very healthy growth experience.
I appreciate that. Sam's giving y'all and me a roadmap here to badassery and transformation. So we appreciate that. One last question on this tangent that we're going on.
Of course.
Where does it come from, or how did you come to a place, or maybe you were always there of, oftentimes when we experience transformation or, improvement and look back on things we did when we were younger or our previous self, you had so much grace for your younger self where you're saying that she did the best she could. Was there ever a time where it was, anger at that former part of yourself, or shame or anything? And I guess just speaking to, because some people I know might be listening and wondering how to get to that place, because they might be in a place like that. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. I think we talked about 15 years ago, right? When I wasn't all that young, 19, well into my teens, right? I think thinking about, when I was much younger than that, I'd say between the ages of 10 and 16, if you will. So prepubescent and then early teens, I experienced a lot of shame because I was just figuring out my gender performance at that point. So I was a tomboy per se, but I knew there was something more to my masculine performance that wasn't just about being a tomboy. I was figuring out my gender, I was figuring out my sexuality. For a while there, I thought I was transgender. And I lived in India right then. So in India, being trans, we have certain trans communities that are ostracized. Of course, things are heavily changing now, but when I was between the ages of 10 and 16, that is the community that I knew. And so there was a lot of, because of the stigma that was placed on that community, I didn't have compassion for that community. Therefore, I didn't have compassion for who I thought I was becoming. And so I felt a lot of shame for wanting to be that person. I used to get teased a lot. People would call me derogatory names that they would call transhumans. And so I didn't want to be affiliated with any of that. I was just so ashamed and so embarrassed that that's who I was. But at the same time, that conflict of acknowledging, but that's who I am. So, trying to come to terms with that was very, very difficult. I did not consider myself an attractive human being, which has changed a lot. I did not consider myself an attractive human being back then. I thought I was, just very ugly, so on and so forth. So experiencing a lot of shame around overall my appearance and the way I manifested my gender identity, the thinking process of what gender identity looks like, so on and so forth. There was a lot of shame. And then when I went to college, though, and that was all of high school. And then when I went to college, though, God, this is so stereotypical and I hate it, but it's just real, I went to an all-girls college, right? I went to an all-women's college, and that's where I figured out my sexuality because I got so much appreciation for the way that I dressed and the way that I looked. And, I loved being on stage. It was the one place that I felt completely safe and completely myself. And I would get on stage and I sang, I did theater, I would debate, I would do all of these oratorical competitions that we had. We have some really wild competitions and they're so much fun to do, and I was great at them. And so I gained a lot of popularity because of that. And I got a lot of attention from women, and I 100% loved it, and a lot of where I've got that confidence from, I say often, women in my life have raised me consistently. And not just women who have played parental roles in my life, not just my mom, not just my grandmom, not just my aunt, all very strong matriarchal figures from a matriarchal family. And then you back that up with being in an all-girls college where you're getting so much attention from women and everyone's like oohing and eyeing all around you, there's no better confidence booster than that. So even if they weren't directly connected to me, even if, they weren't necessarily my friends, so on and so forth, all my life, every single step of the way, women have raised me.
That's so powerful. I appreciate that, Sam. I resonate with your last sentence in that I think of when I started to go from somebody who was perpetuating systems of power and using my power to get advantage and to hurt people, when I started to shift from that to aspiring to be somebody who dismantles them, that's when I had started to have women leadership in my life, women teachers. And so I really resonate with that too. And at the same age as well, 19. That's
right.
when. So
women
go ahead.
Women are an incredible force, my friend. I say this as a woman. I say this as a woman who loves women. And I say this as a woman who's consistently been fortunate enough to have women in her life who have not been hesitant to teach and raise and inform and nurture. All of my closest friends are women. It's very intentional too, I don't give men a chance. I'm being honest with you. I don't give men a chance. I do not have space in my life for the possibility of toxicity, which is not to say that, the normative world that we live in does not allow for us women too to engage in toxic behavior. But the manner in which we engage in them is quite different. And a lot in my world, a lot more palpable. I can come from a place of empathy when it comes to women. I come from a place of anger when it comes to men. And I make no qualms about that. And I'm not shy about it. And I have no intention to change it until men change, you know? And so women are such a strong force and such fantastic humans just in general. I mean, look at us. We are unbelievably resilient. Unbelievably resilient. I strongly believe that my grandfather always used to say, men and women are 100% not equal. Women are far superior to men. If women rule this world, we would be so much better off. I don't understand why we just don't understand that. And it is true. If my grandmother and my eldest aunt rule this world, we would all be so much better off.
Agreed.
It's just fact. Yeah.
I love that. I'm just marinating in this awesomeness that you're radiating. Like a meditation. Let's put a nice meditation music to this podcast and folks can meditate in the transformation and out the toxicity. So we appreciate you, Sam.
Thanks, man. Thank you very much.
Of course. With that, would you like to share a poem with us?
I could absolutely share a poem with you. It's a new piece, so I'm going to read it off my phone.
New piece?
As in, let's just be clear, it's a newer piece, right? So I haven't memorized it. I've only performed it a couple of places. But this is a piece that I wrote for, since we're talking about women, it's a piece that I wrote for International Women's Day. And we did a little gathering and celebration in Tampa. And so I wrote this piece around that time. And in that moment, because of everything that was happening with immigrants, we were celebrating specifically immigrant women at that event. Right? And so from an immigrant woman, this is what the poem sounds like. Some days, the most honest thing that I can do for myself is to listen to the sound of my heart beating. In the morning, right before I awake, right before reality seeps its way through to remind me of this thing called surviving, there is a brief moment before I open my eyes, when the only sound I hear is the soft snore of my puppy peaceful at the edge of my bed and the loud, persistent comfort of my beating heart. I wonder, is this what freedom sounds like? I watch young white boys get their driver's permits like awards that celebrate the mediocrity they will shine on for the rest of their lives. Tongues carved in colonial tradition, learning only ignorance as second language, speaking of the legality of a back door while lining the gates at the front with guns aimed at black and brown children. This country is not a nation of immigrants. It is a land that was imagined on the genocide of native humans, built on the backs of slaves, and devised to hold the heads of minorities underwater while still forcing us to breathe. The life of an immigrant woman is not for the faint-hearted. It requires years of practice walking on eggshells around your own existence, testing the pain tolerance of your own skin, looking around your own home to see if anyone's watching when you kiss your lover, watching over your shoulder when dancing at a nightclub, hoping that you don't accidentally speak your beloved first language. I wonder if I'll ever hear my heart beat without trying. Perhaps this is what freedom sounds like. Millions of hearts beating across the world harder every day. I wonder if this is why mothers of dead children cradle their heads to their chest, so the last thing their souls will hear is the steady beat of a mother's heart over the deafening sound of a racist bullet. I wonder if the founding fathers held their palms over their hearts when taking the Pledge of Allegiance to drown out the humanity of their heartbeats. I wonder if faith leaders rely on their heartbeat to give them rhythm when reciting prayers so they can drown out the sound of hate. I know that my heartbeat gets louder with every line of this poem because my word is my everything. I know that an activist speaks from their heart no matter how afraid their mind is. I know that no wall can keep our community away from us as long as our hearts are beating. I wonder if freedom will ever be our first language. I know this fight won't end in my lifetime. This legacy has outgrown its roots, but decades from now, when this country elects to its highest office a queer, transgender, hijabi Muslim woman of color who came to this country undocumented, ran her whole campaign on her history of being a sex worker, partnered with a gender non-conforming woman of color who raises pit bulls as children, I know then we will hear the future of their heartbeats beating loud and clear, sounding well over the history of white supremacist patriarchy, and none of us will ever forget where we came from.
Yes. Whew.
Thank you for that little bit of practice. I have a show tomorrow in Bombay, and I've been in India for the last, month and 13 days as of now. And so it's been a while since I've done poetry, and man, that really felt good. Thank you for that.
Thank you. When you performed that at the International Women's Day, how was it received?
Very well. Very well. I think we speak so often as women of color also when we speak, and just in terms of the movement, so when we speak, I think we speak so often still in binaries, because we know that the binary is a lie, right? And we know that the spectrum is where the majority of us fall, but still at the same time, we are so conditioned to speak in the binary, it's hard to concisely say anything on the spectrum and have people understand, right? And so I understand what the spectrum looks like very well, and I live in the gray all the time. So my message is always on the spectrum. And I think the people who need to hear that, hear it. And even if that's just one person in the audience, I guess then that's who I'm there for. Right? And so it was very well received at the event. Started a lot of conversations, and that's where it's at, right? It's all about that conversation.
Would you mind elaborating, or what you mean by that we often speak in binaries?
I feel like, okay, so as a masculine performing woman, a lesbian, who's Muslim and Hindu, person of color but not racially black, so on and so forth. I feel like so often when we speak, especially because of the politics of our country and the fact that so many people, even on the left, right, I'm not talking on the progressive left, I just mean on the left, right, don't necessarily yet understand what the nuance of intersectionality looks like. I feel that so much of what is contained in the middle gets lost because we are trying so hard to make a point that we gravitate back to the binary because we're trying to make that point. The intention is real. We're trying to make that point. We have to make that point because lives depend on it, right? But at the same time, in a lot of these political spaces, the middle ground, the spectrum gets lost because politics is so binary. I mean, just look at the political system itself. We have a two-party system. We have a binary system, and so it's very hard to speak outside of the binary. And it's beautiful when you see it happen in activist spaces because it happens so much in grassroots activist spaces. And it's lovely to see that come out, And little by little in this midterm election, I feel like we are seeing that happen. In New York, we're seeing it happen in Florida. We're seeing it happen in different spaces where full-on grassroots progressive candidates who are rejecting big money are doing the work. They are speaking on the spectrum. They are addressing not the LGBT community, but the LGBTQ plus community. When they say humans of color, when they say immigrants, they are talking about people from Syria. They're talking about people from Lebanon. They're not just talking about immigrants coming here directly from the border that is attached to the country, And so it's beautiful to see that conversation happen. And we need more of those conversations. I think the activist spaces, some activist spaces, definitely not all. I think a minority of activist spaces are doing a very good job of that. And it will take a while for political spaces to catch up.
And so tell me if I'm hearing you correctly. For an example, when we're talking about racism, not just talking about black and white people, but including the full spectrum of people of color. If we're talking about women's rights, not just talking about cis women, but the whole spectrum of what it means to be a woman.
What does sexual assault look like to a masculine performing woman? What does sexual assault look like to a femme performing woman? What does sexual assault look like to a trans woman? You know, the effects, both psychologically, physically, psychologically, and physiologically, are so different. Socially, very different. Politically, very different. You know, and I feel like all of these conversations need to happen together. And we need to not piecemeal them, because when you piecemeal, what happens is you're leaving people behind. And that is never okay.
Mm. What are your thoughts on, because this is why I clarified, I had thought you were talking about, so I'm glad I clarified. What are your thoughts on like binary opinions in activist spaces? You know, like you're wrong or you're right, you're woke or you're not. What is there like a spectrum thought you have there too? Or, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, can we say that certain things are absolutely right and certain things are absolutely wrong? Yes, we can, right? But in terms of awareness, in terms of consciousness, in terms of, since you used the word, it's not my favorite word, but since you said woke, in terms of wokeness, this understanding that you are either or is almost like a cop-out. It feels like, I've done my due diligence. I'm done now, right? You don't get to check out after a certain point in time. You consistently have to keep learning. You consistently have to educate yourself. You have to engage in the scholarship. Unfortunately, you have to engage in the scholarship of oppression. You have to engage in the scholarship of activism. You have to engage in the scholarship of what lived experience looks like. And as long as lived experiences carry on, your learning is not done. So you are never woke. The job is never done. You know, when we end discrimination, then the work will be done. When equality and equity has been won, then the work will be done. And the work is certainly not done. So nobody gets to be woke. Nobody gets to be, I'm here. Oh my God, I know the things. I know all the things. You never know all the things. The person on the bottommost rung of the identity spectrum, who has a combination of intersectionalities going against them, who is consistently in grassroots activist spaces, doing the things that need to be done, doing the work, always having the conversations, no matter how difficult they are, facing the police, facing the aggressors, facing the oppressors. When they are consistently doing the work and reading and learning and having the conversations, what right do the rest of us have to say we're good? That's a heavy space of privilege right there, to think you know the things and you're done knowing the things. It's an unfortunate thing, don't you think, for people to think that their knowledge is complete? Like, how sad is that? Knowledge is such a beautiful thing, no matter how heavy it might be. Why not consistently engage in it?
I'm with you. I think there's knowledge that people are more used to being trained to understand, which is a fact that you regurgitate and then deploy in some sort of meritocracy, quote unquote, that gets you promoted or gets you better pay or a better grade in school. And the only really cost of entry is the effort. But the knowledge we're talking about is knowledge that really requires that self-reflection, and especially when you're coming from a place of privilege, recognizing you didn't earn everything. And these people who you might consider your friends or family, you now have to actively work to, you know, call that out or hold them accountable. So I think for a lot of people, they view that, or that knowledge is experienced differently. And why?
Absolutely. I mean, certainly. I mean, there's a lot of power in how we acquire knowledge as well. And what knowledge looks very differently for each of us, right? And so, but having the humility to say, I have learned something today and I will learn more tomorrow. So I think where we begin, so that there is no end.
Yeah, no, for me, I'd always rather know if I'm being an asshole than not. And when you tell me you're an asshole, it might smart in that moment, but it means all my future relationships aren't going to have this element anymore.
Right. Depends on who's telling you that to do that, right?
What do you mean?
I mean, for example, if you're being an asshole and it's connected to somebody's race in some way, and that human of color has to tell you that, you know, it puts the onus on them, you know, to check you in your behavior. And it's a difficult place to be, because oftentimes, I mean, as a woman of color, I don't know where a white man is coming from when I don't know what he's capable of when he's capable of being an asshole, right? I don't know what more he's capable of. And so it's a difficult line of safety. Unfortunately, safety and responsibility don't go hand in hand in such a situation. You feel a sense of responsibility to check this behavior, because what if said person enacts that behavior on somebody else? But at the same time, okay, now once I say this, can I really go to my car by myself from this space? You know?
I do.
So, yeah.
And I know only because people like you have decided to tell me.
Right.
Because all my life, what's the problem?
Right.
I don't, what are they going to do? Call my parents?
Right.
And
I mean, if they're willing to call India, by all means, they can call my parents. So, yeah.
And what we're finding is what then amplifies it. So not only I don't have to worry about that, or have had to worry about that, but I also, which is what I think you're alluding to, if I or somebody that has the same level of power as me were to take negative actions, I also subconsciously or consciously know that the whole system is set up to defend my actions that I thought were justified.
Absolutely. The consequences for you would be very different from the consequences for me, as we can see by what's happening at the hearings, right? That we were just talking about earlier. Consequences look very differently for different people. Based on the way the system is set up to take care of some humans, and then not so much everybody else.
Well, that's why, I loved your poem. The imagery that was coming to my mind was, like we were reading it post-revolution as, like, we know that the Star Spangled Banner is like a racist song that talks, is getting people to continue to fight a war, to put oppressors in power. That more yours, as we're looking back, like, oh, this was Sam's poem that really, when the revolutionaries were down, we read it and it gave us heart with this vision of what a presidency could look like and what this world could look like. So for me, that I was really feeling inspired by that vision of what can come next.
I appreciate that. Thank you, man.
Yeah, definitely.
Appreciate that.
So
I can't wait to see a hijabi Muslim woman.
The whole thing that you explained. In a
position of power now.
On her platform of, what was the line?
Who will run her entire campaign on her platform of being a sex worker.
And what was the line about raising pit bull children?
Partnered with a gender non-conforming woman who raises pit bulls for children, aka yours truly.
I thought so.
So I will be her first human in the White House. That will be my title. First human, Sam Obeid, pit bull raiser.
I would love to see that whatever holiday card y'all send out on whatever holiday it is.
Oh, it will be so bad.
Would you still use the word president? What would be the word?
That would be her choice, yeah. What word she would use.
Dope.
I would be first human, but whether she would still want to be called whether she would want to be called president or not would be dependent on her.
I love it.
Yeah.
You briefly mentioned that you're in India.
I am, yes.
Which part of India?
Chennai, also known as Madras, all the way in the south.
And so you said you've been there for a year and 6 days?
Definitely not a year, for a month and 13 days.
That's what I meant, a month.
Yes, a month and 13 days. Good Lord, good friend. Do not do that to me.
What's it's up to you if you want to give the backstory, but what's that been like for you?
It's been difficult. So this wasn't a vacation, I didn't come here on vacation. I'm an immigrant. So, I've been I came to the US as a student on a student visa, moved up to a work visa, and through a lot of the application process, the immigration lawyers that I hired did not do their due diligence by me and messed up a lot of my paperwork, leaving me in the lurch and in a very bad situation, especially in this current administration. When I had applied, it was the Obama administration. This current administration puts you a bit more at risk, right? And so the manner in which they had filed my paperwork elicited a notice from the American government, right? Immigration, telling me where they granted my visa for 3 years, okay, from July of 2018 to April of 2021, and however, denied my eligibility of stay because I had been in the US on the wrong kind of paperwork because my lawyers messed up. Something that I was not, information that I was not privy to because I'm not an attorney. When you pay somebody to do their job, you expect them to do it, you know? So fortunately, we caught that mistake because the organization I work for, Community Tampa Bay, is a boss organization. And my new executive director is also an attorney. And she read through the paperwork. She caught some of that. She caught a lot of that. She caught 100% of that, let's be clear. And through her networks, found me another lawyer who is an incredible human being, gives it to you like it is. It's quick on action steps. Here are the problems with what happened with your past applications. These are the things you need to do. This is what has to happen, and has had my back for the last 3 months, and has had so much faith in my ability to advocate for myself, and so on and so forth. So when you get that notice of eligibility, you have to leave the country. The only option is to leave the country. Otherwise, you will be transferred to out of status that is out of status, right? And so obviously, I have a lot of privilege. I have no right to be there without taking all the potential steps that I can take to be there with documentation. You know, my situation is dire, but not as dire, right? And having an organization that's willing to back me up so hard. And finally, a good attorney, one of 3, to help me out. And so what happened was I needed to leave the US 2 weeks from when I received that notice. And the only option that I had was to come back to India, apply for a visa interview here, go for my visa interview, explain the situation, answer whatever questions they have, explain the situation to them, and hope that they would allow me to go back to the US. I came to India. Took me solid 3 weeks to be able to finish the application because the link kept expiring. It was all of these technical issues. Like one day it would work, the other day it wouldn't. I had questions for my lawyer, and there's a 9.5-hour time difference between Tampa and here, so on and so forth. And so dealing with all those issues, 3 weeks later, I managed to get my application in. September 14th, I did my interview. The interview went well, and my visa is currently in processing so that I can come back to the United States. Trust me, I am so happy about it too. I've lived in the US for the last 11 years now. That is my home, you know? And so this hasn't been much of a vacation. It's been a lot of hurry up and wait. Where I'm trying to get everything done, so I can't travel. I'm the one that needs to pick this up and pick that up and get this done and get that done. So, you know, there was like my biographical page on my passport, the lamination had lifted. And so that's considered a damaged passport. So they couldn't stamp my visa at the visa interview. I had to get my passport renewed, which is a whole other process altogether, and then submit it. But thanks to the universe, everything seems to have worked out, and I should be back home soon.
Well, when we saw that news, I was so excited and so happy for you. And I know, you know, we are a better community because of you. So grateful.
Thank you, Tom.
No, thank you. What was that uncertainty like? And you don't have to go like rehash negative feelings, but how do you work through uncertainty?
I compartmentalize. I am a G at compartmentalization. For me, I'm very much an action steps kind of person. So for me, it is, we have a problem. Oh my God, this is a problem. 5 minutes. This is a problem. This is a problem. This is a problem. Freak out. Oh no. And then your 5 minutes are up. Now you have to do the things, and there is no choice,
Mm.
So the thing that helps me deal the most is to not have to deal with the emotions in that moment.
Mm.
I needed to create the space so that I could come back to the US and then deal with my emotions. In that moment, it was not the place to do so. And so that's what I do. I've been compartmentalizing for the last 6 months, however long it's been, since March, and just working through the things and doing what I have to do to get myself back to the US. And that's just how you deal with it.
Yes. Well, we're gonna keep you in our prayers. And
thank you very much.
Once we see that IG story of you at the airport, we're all gonna breathe a little easier.
Trust me, man. Likewise.
So, on that note, would you like to share with us another poem?
Absolutely. This is a poem on gender. It's one that I enjoy doing a lot. It's always meant a lot to me. It explains my journey. So I'll do this piece for you. There is nothing here. There is nothing here but a blank slate. There is nothing here but flesh and blood and skin and bones, and then she appears. She stands here naked for the first time. Body scarred with violence she's not yet feared, face lined with stories she's not yet told. She stands here naked for the first time too long, crouched, cringing, waiting for cover. Her Muslim heritage has taught her well that this body bears no ground for pride, and then he appears. He stands here naked for the first time, clenched fists covering her breasts, spine erect, butch present. He stands here naked for the first time too long. He is nothing without the absence of her. She is no one without the fallacy of him. Together, they become. The thing about identity is we are always ready to check each other into boxes, even when there's no paperwork to be done. I'm an independent woman, but one of my closest friends sees it fit to call me sexist when I tell her I am uncomfortable being financially supported by a significant other, even though I have no problem if she decides she does not want to work a day in her life. I ask her, think about what she has just said. If maybe I look more feminine, she may have had a different opinion, or if maybe she would have respected the independence I learned at a young age I must never give up by consequence of being a woman. We are both women. I just wear mine differently than you yours. There is a compulsory misogyny that comes with this identity that can be so blinding you completely miss the point. So quick to label me in your own image. All of a sudden, I'm not woman enough to understand. All of a sudden, I'm not my mother's daughter, but my father's son. The thing about identity is we are always ready to tell someone else who they are so we can see ourselves in them. Universe forbid we should ever say, I don't understand, tell me more. So when I do, it appears I impose my identity upon you. Please know I'm not honored by the look of surprise on your face when I tell you my pronouns are female. Please know I'm not honored by the look of surprise on your face when I tell you consent applies to me too. Human nature requires that we destroy that which we do not understand. So we take difference and fix it into a box. One size fits too small. We peel back its skin and rip through its flesh until we break its every bone and bleed it soaking wet until there is nothing here. There is nothing here but a blank slate. There is nothing here but flesh and blood, and skin and bones until we disappear.
Yes. I remember that poem. I love that poem.
It's probably one that I do the most frequently.
Does it feel different every time you perform it?
Depends on the audience.
What about
ever so often? Yes.
What about for an audience of one? What's that like?
Fantastic.
And I'm on mute. So
hey man.
No reaction.
Audience sizes don't matter. It's just about the people, you know. I know you're on mute, so I can't figure out what you're thinking. Is he saying something? Or what is he making? Come on, man, give me a reaction, Tom.
There was a lot of mms. Two mms that really stuck out for me was the compulsory misogyny. Is that the line?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That comes with this identity, yes.
Do you want to elaborate on that at all? No pressure to, just if you like.
No, absolutely. As a masculine performing woman, again, right, we were talking about binaries earlier. As a masculine performing woman, a lot of humans expect that masculinity to come with the toxicity and the misogyny that comes with cisgender masculinity. And so there's an expectation of a certain level of treatment that we as humans are unfortunately used to, that is rooted in cisgender male misogyny and cisgender toxic masculinity. And so a lot of times that is transposed onto a human like myself who performs masculinity. So the expectation that, you don't like you would never depend on your significant other financially, but you'd be okay with financially supporting her. That's so sexist. Like, is it your ego that does that? Is it because you're do you think you are the man in the outfit and that's why you cannot be dependent on her, but it's okay for her to be dependent on you? No, it doesn't have anything to do with me being the man in the outfit, because I'm not. And it has nothing to do with my masculinity being rooted in pride or ego. It has everything to do with my masculinity being rooted in the fact that I am also an incredibly independent woman who, in her womanness, performs her womanhood by not wanting to be dependent on anyone, not just a significant.
The other line that I at was, I'm going to butcher it, but you don't honor me with your look of surprise when I say...
When I tell you my pronouns are female, yeah.
And then the next line, that consent applies to me.
To me too, yes. I'm not honored by the look of surprise on your face when I tell you consent applies to me too. It has to do with that same line. That's interesting that those are the two things that you picked up because they're very directly connected to each other. It has to do with that same idea of transposing cisgender male masculinity onto women, masculine performing women, in the idea that I don't need to give consent. Of course, I must be flattered should I receive excessive amounts of attention from my own gender, from my own gender specifically, right? Because if you're a stud, why wouldn't you want all of that attention? What's the problem?
I think
it's that idea of a young man, right? A young man should be virile and have multiple suitors, and when he is a stud, right? Which is the exact opposite narrative that women receive, right? But that cisgender male masculinity transposed onto women who are masculine performing, expecting that we must feel the same way too, is a direct consequence of that.
Even though I've heard this poem so many times, I have such a new understanding of the poem and the experience you're talking about. So I appreciate that. Because it was something I just never even understood. So I appreciate, you using poetry, and maybe not with this intention, but it opened my eyes and helped me see more of what you go through. So I appreciate that.
I appreciate you saying that. I appreciate your sharing of that response.
There's so much love here for you, Sam. We got your back.
Thanks, man. Thank you. And don't I know it? My God, my community comes out to support. Yeah, it's an amazing feeling to know that.
So I had mentioned at the beginning that this was my year of courage. And my reason for that is because I feel that we have a one-dimension view of courage, that it's just these like huge acts of physical putting yourself in harm's way, which that is courage. But I think, like, going back to our earlier conversation, we miss a lot of the nuance of what courage looks like in people's everyday life. And so my intention was, I wanted to just hear from people what courage looks like for them. And so if you feel called to, I was wondering what courage looks like in your life.
I think it differs from day to day. Some days it's just waking up and getting out of bed. Other days it is having the patience and the humility to listen, to sit back and listen to a bunch of young humans tell you what they think of you and the world around them, and actively listen to what they are saying, even though you know oftentimes that you created this world. You were just as complicit in creating this world that they are now forced to live in. Sometimes I think courage is big feats, big acts of physical feats, right? Physical endeavor. Like Sherlock and I went hiking one day, and there was this 10-foot gator 5 feet away from us.
What?
It was, okay, so I'm going to share this with y'all because the universe and I are in conflict right now, okay? So the universe does all of this immigration stuff to me, right? And so I think to myself, okay, you know what? I have to leave in 2 weeks. I need to spend as much time with my puppy as possible. Also, I'm really stressed. When I'm stressed, I like to be outdoors. So I'm like, we're going to go out. We're going to go on a hike. And it's Florida, so it's been raining like crazy. Half the trails are underwater. I find this one trail that is, half of it is underwater, so they close it off. You're not allowed to go there. But the other half, you can still explore. So we go on this really nice trail, blah, 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 whatever. We're walking, and suddenly it's the Alafai River, right? So there's a lot of swamp. Suddenly the river like takes a bend and goes that way. Right at that bend, there's this hump. And Sherlock and I are walking, and she's like about, I want to say, just a little bit, a couple of yards in front of me, right? And I see this massive, like 10-foot, scaly back, right? Like 5 feet away from me, Tom. I'm not kidding. Had I just taken, like, I want to say 10 steps forward, I would have been standing on that thing's back by mistake, right? And it's right there. And fortunately, I have a dog that hangs on my every word. You know how dogs are. They sense your energy or your heart rate pick up immediately, right? So I go, Sherlock. I just whisper, like, wait. She turns and looks at me, tucks her tail between her leg, and I was like, let's go, right? And I don't even say anything. I just point. I just gesture, let's go. Full speed, both of us are walking, like speed walking, okay? And halfway she decides, she doesn't know what's going on. So halfway she decides she wants to relieve herself. And I'm like, no, you are not going to the side of this trail. Get in the middle, right? And I turn around, and we're walking so fast, and turn around and look, this thing is not coming behind us. Thank God it has not sensed that we are there. It's not coming behind us. Oh my God, after that, we just booked it, man. Like, I ran for an entire mile. It was nerve-wracking. We got all the way to the end of the park. We got to like the picnic area where the picnic tables and the shelters are. We got there, and I just crashed on the ground. I'm literally looking at the sky, and I'm like, are you kidding me right now? You thought this wasn't enough. You just thought you just throw a gator in there and see what she does with that. What is wrong with you people? You know? And I'm like, to all the gods, the Hindu gods, everybody, what are y'all doing up there? Right? And I'm just like shouting at the sky, and Sherlock's like, you're crazy, I know, so it's all good. But things like that happen, right? But I feel like that was a moment of courage to not freak out and have the presence of mind to get my kid out of there. Because if anything had happened to Sherlock, that's where we would have had a problem. That gator and I would just have to go for it. You know, but like that feels, it's like my courageous story of look at me and my kid. We got away from this difficult position, no problem, you know? It feels like courage a little bit, right? But I think for me, courage has a lot to do with, in my world, who I am as a human being. Courage has a lot to do with visibility. Mm. That is how I see my most courageous self, is my most courageous self. And like I said, it changes every day, but my most courageous self is my ability despite the risks, despite the threats, to constantly be visible as my true and authentic self.
It's powerful. Well, Sam, I want to thank you so much for the alligator stories and
I got you, man.
sharing the story of your truth and the poetry and the vulnerability and the power. So thank you so much for being you and sharing it with myself and the folks listening and watching. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Thank you to you. Thank you to everybody listening. Thank you to the whole Tampa Bay community. Thank you to the whole poetry community, everyone for all their support from so far away. Can't wait to be home soon. And thanks.
Of course. So hopefully this gives y'all some, access to Sam while Sam's over in India. But if you'd like to spend time live with Sam, Sam is going to be our feature for this Saturday's live and online expression session. That's October 20th at noon Pacific Standard Time, 2 p.m. if you're in Central Time, 3 p.m. if you're on the East Coast, 8 p.m. if you're in London, 8 p.m. if you're in Nigeria, and then it's 12:30 if you are in India, which Sam will no longer be, hopefully. Sam will be tuned into that one, performing live from Tampa on the 20th. So we're looking forward to you being our feature, Sam. Really appreciate that you're doing that as a return feature. So thank you so much for that.
It is my pleasure.
Where can folks find you and connect with you on social?
You can absolutely find me and connect with me on both Facebook and Instagram. If you look for Samira Obeid, that's spelled Samira, last name Obeid, Obeid. And on Instagram, it's just Sam Obeid. So Sam, S-A-M, last name Obeid, Obeid. Find me on Facebook, find me on Instagram, hit me up. I will follow you back. Can't wait to connect with all of you wonderful humans.
Definitely. All of the show notes are tomrell.com/SamO. tomrell.com/SamO, because tomrell.com/Sam is 2017's interview. So if you want to check out both interviews, you can head to tomrell.com/Sam, but this one's is Sam O. So check that out, or tomrell.com/blog. It'll be the most recent one. Once again, Sam, I appreciate this. I'm looking forward to your feature this Saturday. And this is so cool that we got to connect. You're 12 and a half hours ahead of me. It's nighttime.
I know.
Technology,
Yep.
but the connection.
Technology. It is 1:10 in the morning here, but
wow.
Hey, literally all the way across the world.
Yes. So I love for my guests to have the last word. So my final question for you is, what is your invitation to people to think about, to be, to do, to live? What is your invitation to them?
My invitation to you is to constantly engage in the possibility of your becoming. Don't ever be done being who you are. Constantly be ready to continue to become more and explore yourself. We are all incredibly interesting human beings. Have conversations with yourself constantly. It doesn't matter if people think you are talking to yourself. It is a fantastic thing to keep company with yourself. Become your best friend. Challenge yourself constantly and become every day. Just continue to become.
Well said. Thank you once again, Sam. I really appreciate it. And to all of those listening, as always, we're wishing you peace and blessings. One more thing. I'd love to continue the conversation. Feel free to join me at tomrell.com/join. Subscribe below, or let's connect on social media. Tom Earl Artist. Thanks again for watching.